As we mentioned earlier, it is election day in a lot of places around the country. We are closely watching two big races. In Virginia, it's a hotly contested governor's race between Democrat Ralph Northam and Republican Ed Gillespie. Another high-stakes election for governor of New Jersey will determine who succeeds Chris Christie. We already told you about that one. Let's discuss the Virginia race with Julian Epstein, a Democratic strategist and former chief counsel for the House Judiciary Committee. Kevin McCullough is a conservative syndicated radio host. Thanks, both of you, for being here. Julian, are you nervous about this race in Virginia?
Yes, I think Northam will probably win. The party out of the White House generally wins in the gubernatorial race in Virginia. I think the Democrats will probably win in New Jersey, and I think for the midterm elections, Democrats, the poll numbers are all showing, at least for Congress, that the public favors a Democratic-controlled Congress rather than a Republican one. So I think that's the good news for the Democrats. The bad news for the Democrats is that the race in Virginia is much closer than it should be. The Democratic candidate there has run a very lackluster campaign, has kind of run against Trump rather than being for something. And I think the lesson for the Democrats here is that even though we have a deeply unpopular president, the most unpopular president since we've been doing polling, 2 out of 3 Americans don't believe or trust or like the job he's doing, Democrats can't just run against Trump. They have to be for something. And I think the lack of them being for something that's very clear and understandable in Virginia means the race is a lot closer than it ought to be.
Kevin, the Real Clear Politics average of polling had Ralph Northam, the Democratic candidate in Virginia, up 6 points a month ago. Over the weekend, that average poll had him up by 2 points. Clearly, this race is getting tighter. Does the Republican candidate have a chance to pull it out, Ed Gillespie?
I think he does. And part of what you want to watch going into Election Day is not necessarily where the polls land at on that day, but which direction the momentum's headed. And clearly, Gillespie made up ground in the closing chapter of the campaign. And I agree with Julian on this. I think that the Democrats, without having anything more than Trump to run against, have not bettered themselves really in either of these gubernatorial races. I actually suspect New Jersey will be closer than what any of the polls have shown at this point, because neither Phil Murphy nor Mr. Northam in the 2 gubernatorial races have really cast a vision for what they're going to offer as an alternative. In New Jersey, it's just very much against Chris Christie. In the Virginia race, it's against President Trump. And Ed Gillespie he's got some momentum behind him. He's got a little bit of wind of his sails. And if the polls work out the way they did in the presidential election in November of last year, if the race is 2 points, I think Gillespie wins by about 3. So, and if they split today, this is a win for Republicans who have been on a big win streak since Trump got elected.
You mentioned, Julian, the new polling about President Trump. There's a CNN poll out that says roughly only 36% of Americans approve of the job he's doing, 58% disapprove. You can look at those numbers and say, okay, Democrats are sure to roll in both of those states, but look at all of the polls that suggested this man would never become president of the United States, and he has defied the expectations and defied the odds, it seems like, at every turn.
Well, look, I think there's good news and a bad news. Again, if you're looking at it from a kind of strictly a Democratic point of view here, it's really a 1/3, 2/3 split. 1/3 of the country likes the job he's doing, 1/3 believes in him, 1/3 doesn't like the Russia investigation, 2/3 the opposite. They all think he's doing a bad job, they don't believe what he says, and they think the Russia investigation is very important. I think the other factor in your question is, remember, Hillary Clinton was a deeply unpopular candidate, so I think that he had an artificial bump because of that. The point here for the Democrats, however, is they can't just simply run against Trump. That's not going to be enough. We've had the largest peacetime expansion in job creation in the last 7-8 years since Obama took over in 2009 and continuing through Trump. The problem is that wages are going down now. And the fact that you don't hear Democrats out there talking about how working class Americans are being forgotten on a daily basis, how their incomes are not increasing, their economic security is not increasing, their health care is not where it ought to be, that they're not dealing with bread and butter issues, and instead they're dealing with these kind of silly issues that the Virginia debate has taken them to, is bad news for Democrats. They need to be much more affirmative in what they believe in.
I'm getting the wrap. We're about to hit a commercial break. Julian Epstein, thank you. Kevin, I owe you the last answer next time.
Sorry.
Thanks, John.